Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about an NBA team that, if the NBA decides to return to play this season with some kind of postseason format, this is a team that I'm positive the other teams in the league would be absolutely terrified to play in the postseason. Before the video gets started, I want to see who you guys think I'm talking about in this video. I'm going to do my best to make a thumbnail that doesn't give it away. Let me know down in the comment section below which team you think I am referring to. But really quickly, before we get started, if you enjoy the NBA, then consider subscribing. I upload every single day. Okay, so before I get into the actual team and all of the specifics of the video and things like that, I do want to share some positive news here at the beginning of this video, because this week is the first time that I've really felt optimistic about the NBA returning in some kind of format this season, regular season, postseason, whatever. I've made, I don't know, 2 or 3 videos throughout the entire situation since the league has been suspended. And in every single one of them, I basically felt like I just don't see how they can get all the logistics together. Most recently, I made a video talking about how all these players came together in a conference call, and it seemed like there was positive momentum, but I still just wasn't optimistic about the ability to get all the things together that they needed to within the timeline that they needed to. But as of today, this is the first time that and maybe I'm getting my hopes up when I shouldn't, but there just seems to be so much positive momentum, so many ideas floating around, that it just kind of seems like it's inevitable that the NBA will be returning more than likely at Disney here within the next 6 to 7 to 8 weeks, okay? So that's the positive news. Now let's get to the actual core part of the video here. So I'm interested, as I said, to see what teams you guys think I'm talking about. And it's not the New Orleans Pelicans and Zion Williamson, although I think they're very excited to see him in the postseason. And I think the NBA is going to do everything they can do to come up with a format in which Zion Williamson can play. It's not a team like the Portland Trailblazers that has Damian Lillard, who's not currently in the postseason, but can obviously be very dangerous once he gets there. It's not the San Antonio Spurs, who obviously have Greg Popovich, and teams would be scared of just kind of the organizational competency of that group and their ability to just kind of pull out some wins out of nowhere. No, it's my very own Brooklyn Nets. And there's a lot of different reasons for this. And it depends a lot on a couple of different things. One, the playoff format that the league ends up going with, I think, has a huge impact on whether or not the Nets are actually going to be a dangerous team in the postseason. Because I have tried to look into all of the different formats, all the different proposals, all these different ideas being thrown around, and it's honestly really difficult for me to wrap my head around the sheer number of them as well as the specifics on all of them. The most interesting, and I would say at least the one that's gotten the most positive feedback publicly, has been this idea of a group stage type format similar to how the World Cup is run. And this is something that has been thrown out by The Ringer, by Kevin O'Connor, people like that. And apparently there's been a lot of positive momentum around that publicly with fans. Whether that's the case behind the scenes or not, I'm not sure. But it's either something like that, or you're going into it with 16 teams, both teams that are top 8 in the playoffs, and then running through with no conferences and doing things like that. And again, I don't fully understand all those formats. I put a lot of time into it. I'm still kind of unsure about everything, so I don't feel comfortable really explaining those too much. But let's just say that a scenario exists where, whether it's in a group stage or because of conferences that are or seeding that doesn't involve conferences, let's just say that there's a scenario in which the first round or the first game or one of the first games in a group stage involves the Nets playing, you know, the Lakers or the Clippers or one of the favorite teams in either conference. I find it hard to believe that there wouldn't at least be some momentum within the Nets organization to get Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant ready to play and for those guys to play in the postseason. Because no matter what happens with this new playoff format, it's going to limit the advantage, the inherent advantage of higher seeded teams within the postseason, because there's no home court advantage. There's not going to be fans, and they're still going to try and find a way to make sure that there is some sort of advantage given to those teams that perform so well in the regular season, but it's going to be limited compared to how it normally would be, which ideally kind of makes it a little bit more of a wide open field, right? And so if you're a little bit on the, not necessarily on the same level, but if the talent gap isn't as wide between one of these teams that's the lower seed, like the Nets, compared to one of these teams that's the higher seed, like the Lakers, Clippers, Bucks, whoever, then in theory, it makes it easier for an upset to occur, and you could see kind of a lower seeded team advance further in the postseason. And the best thing that I can come up with to think about this is when they had the lockout in like 99 or 2000, whatever year that the Knicks made the finals as like the 8th seed, was a shortened season. It was a weird season, and they made that run in the postseason, and they had some talented players obviously on that roster. But similar situation here, right? Like, it's a weird season, it's a weird postseason, and the Nets have the talent potentially, if Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving do want to play, to make some crazy things happen in the postseason. So now let's get to the Kyrie Irving and the Kevin Durant aspect of this, right? So my thought process across this entire season, whether it was pre-suspension, post-suspension, has always been there's an absolute zero chance that Kevin Durant specifically comes back and plays for the postseason. Kyrie, obviously, you don't know what's going on with the shoulder injury, and they're going to be connected if they do decide to return. And the reasoning behind the Kevin Durant thing was just there's no way that with how everything went down with him at Golden State at the end, where they may or may not have rushed him back and it caused a really severe injury that caused him to miss the entire season. I just didn't see a scenario in which the Nets were going to put Kevin Durant potentially in a similar situation when he just signed. They're saying, hey, you should go ahead and come back for the end of the season. They were going to be overly cautious because of the public perception issue that caused the Warriors, right? However, there have been some things said recently by people affiliated with the Nets that make me think it's at the very least a possibility. So we have the Woj tweet from, a month ago, basically saying there's no scenario in which Kevin Durant is going to play this season. But more recently, guys like Ian Eagle that are closer to the Nets have said that at the very least, that decision is going to be connected. There's going to be a push within the organization to see if these guys do want to play. And if they want to play, maybe they'll let them as long as Kevin Durant is medically cleared. You even got the GM of the Nets saying recently that Kevin Durant looks fantastic in workouts. And I'm just saying that there's maybe a 10% chance that a scenario exists in which the Nets are playing the Lakers or the Clippers in whatever new format there is for the postseason, and Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are healthy, and they say, hey, why not have these guys play? Worst case, we played 4 or 5 games and we're out of the postseason, and they got to, play a couple of games with each other, and that's the end of it. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to push them to the point where you feel like they're going to get re-injured, and you try it out. You try and get these guys some run with this group to at least get some kind of experience. And best case scenario, they're really good and they win a couple of games, maybe make a postseason run and can maybe do something with this group. I'm not saying that that's my opinion. That's just like a mock conversation that could occur within the organization if the chips fall in the correct way. And in that scenario, I think that there would be a lot of teams that would be looking at their schedule and saying, man, I would much rather play, the Blazers or the Spurs or even a team like the Pelicans than a Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving Nets team. And obviously there's some bias here for me. And I'm not even all that optimistic that this is going to occur, or honestly that it would be successful if it did occur, because it'd be so difficult to change everything about your team with a different coach, by the way, than what started the season and actually have some kind of postseason success like that. I think that would be difficult. And so that's why the title of this video isn't this team could win the NBA title this year if everything falls right. The title is teams would be scared or terrified or something similar to that of this particular team in the postseason, and I absolutely think that would be true. You guys can disagree with me down in the comment section below. Maybe there's a different team that you think teams would be more afraid of in this new format, whether it's the Pelicans or even a team like the Thunder that has all this depth and a postseason closer in Chris Paul. Whatever it is, you guys can let me know which team you think it would be. But for me, I'm growing cautiously optimistic, 1, that we're going to have the NBA playoffs this season, 2, that it's going to be at the very least a different and more interesting format, and 3, that as a result of that format, there could be some push within the Nets organization to say, hey, we've got all this talent. It's a weird season. Let's just see what these guys can do. As long as we can do it safely, as long as we are prioritizing the long-term health of these players because we have them under contract for the next few seasons, let's just see what it would look like, whether it's a game, 2 games. If they don't feel right about it, then we don't have to, push them any further. But they're going to be well rested. They're going to be as healthy as they could possibly be for the season because the playoffs were pushed back further than they would have been. I think the timeline of all this changes the potential possibilities for this Nets team. And again, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying that I would be at least a little bit more afraid of this Nets team than I would any other lower seeded team in the entire league if I was one of the top seeded teams. And I'm really excited about the possibility that the NBA could be back, that we could have this new playoff format, and that we could just have any kind of live sports back amongst everything that's going on in the world right now. I think that would be a really good thing. Again, as long as they can do it safely for the players, for the families, for everybody, all the workers involved, they can do it safely. I'm excited to see it, and I would be very interested to see what my very own Brooklyn Nets could do in the postseason this year. And yeah, there you have it. That is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.